You're listening to the Real Witches of the End Times, transmissions straight from the underworld. Doom witches, blood wizards, underworld accountants, and cloud people. Welcome back to the Real Witches of the End Times. I'm your host, Manna Bueller, and today I have with me Marco Visconti, who I met again. The beginning of this podcast is when I start to describe how synchronistically and strange I meet all of my guests. And so this one, Marco, for this interview, I went to PhenomenaCon, which was an online paranormal conference put on by Greg and Dana Newkirk. And I watched his lecture on the Star Sapphire ritual, and I was like, wow, I would love to talk to Marco. And afterwards, I emailed him, and then he proceeded to tell me that he'd already listened to my interview with Tyler and was starting to binge my podcast. And so what a wonderful wow, we just we already knew that we needed to talk to each other.
Pretty
And
much.
you also live in Glastonbury, which is something I talked about on that interview with Tyler as well.
Oh, yes, indeed. I moved to Glastonbury 4 months ago, actually. As soon as it was possible to roam the country once again, me and my partner, we packed all our stuff and we came here because we were living in London, central London, and London is not what it used to be. Let's put it like that. I guess every big city is not really what it used to be, and maybe for the best because I don't know, it wasn't really sustainable, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, we felt that we need a little bit of time. It's been a rough year for everyone, um, especially for us for many reasons. Like personal, families, tragedies, pretty much. And it was like, I mean, I love Glastonbury. I think everybody who's interested in the occult, in magic and witchcraft, I've heard of Glastonbury in the UK at least once because it's apparently, the portal to the other world. And I
Mm-hmm.
always came here over the summers since I moved. I mean, I'm originally from Rome, Italy, and I lived all over. I lived all over the world really because I've been a professional musician for most of my life. And then 7 years ago, I decided to move to London, leave my music career behind, and I became a book trader and an esoteric book trader at Treadwell's in London, and which is one of the biggest in the world. And if you never visited, you definitely should. But like coming here, I was like, I always visited Glastonbury in the summer because that's what you do really. It's such a strange, magical place. So it was a no-brainer really at some point to say, you know what, we want to leave London, but let's go somewhere that it's completely different. Glastonbury. And here I am.
That's so fascinating. Like I live to I'm sorry, I moved to the UK. Just you kind of just get these feelings you need to go places.
Hmm.
And that was how I ended up in Bristol. That was also how I ended up in Glastonbury wandering around. And it's so interesting whenever I would mention to anyone who lived in my flat or other people that I'd met and be like, "Oh, I went to Glastonbury." Their immediate assumption was, "Oh, they mean the music festival?" And I was
Yeah,
like, "No, like what do
exactly.
you?"
Yeah, I guess everybody knows Glastonbury because of the festival, but not many people know that the Glastonbury festival doesn't happen here. I mean, of course you do because you've been here. It happens
Hmm.
in a Worthy farm in Pilton, which is, I mean, it's only 5 kilometers away from here, but it's definitely not the little quirky town where I am right now.
Oh, yeah. So you're a Thelemite, or I don't know much about it, so I'm probably going to mess up the specific terms and everything. But I was so interested in your lecture because if those listening haven't watched Hellier yet, there is a huge significance to it. Because you talked to me off mic about your experience, and can you give us a little bit of a brief introduction for those who are not sure
Of
what
course.
Thelema is? Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let's see if I can. So, Thelema is a Greek word that means will, and it is also the the name of, let's say, a magical current, a magical tradition that was channeled and opened by the notorious Aleister Crowley in 1904 with the reception of the Book of the Law, or rather, like the new Book of the Law, because if you think of the term Book of the Law, many people would think of the Torah or the Bible. Crowley being Crowley, that is like a narcissist and an egomaniac, he obviously thought, oh, I received the new book of the law. And the reality there is that there's a lot of interesting things written in that book and in the other holy books of Thelema. So pretty much it's a magical system, a magical current that can be understood also as a magical philosophy. It can be understood as a religion if you want to. Pretty much it tells you that in this new eon, in this new age of humanity, the we don't have basically to wait for someone else to save us. We don't have to wait, for Christ to redeem us or anything like that. It's down to us to discover our true will. Then that means our purpose and role into this incarnation, and to do so, and by doing so we would unlock the divine potential in each of us. That's as a soundbite. Then I can talk for like 5 hours if you want to, but maybe it's better to keep it like this. Um, and maybe it's simply important to say that since you mentioned Hellier, and that's how we ended up, meeting each other. In Hellier, something happened, and that's what caught my attention, because I really don't have a background in paranormal investigators, ghost TV. I never watched any of that because I was on tour, getting drunk. Let's not go there. But what happened there is that I was a friend of mine told me, like, you got to watch this thing, even if it's not your thing, you got to watch it. And then I realized that what Greg and Dana and Tyler and Connor and Carl ended up discovering, it is pretty much Thelema at play in the real world. A worldwide initiation trying to push this message out, and that's happening right now. So that's why it's so exciting, because you read about magic and you think these things never happen, and then maybe, I don't know, you watch, I don't know, magical shows on TV, from Harry Potter onwards, and you think, that thing do not happen in the real world. They do. It's just that maybe they're less flashy than people expect, but they definitely do. And Hellier is, in the show they say Hellier is a symptom. It's a symptom of magic at work, definitely.
Yeah. I was joking with Tyler the other day. It was after the debates in the US with the
Uh-huh.
presidential debate. I was like, I like the Hellier ritual a lot better than that one.
Right, exactly. Oh my, I mean, like, I don't know what's happening in the US right now. I really, really hope
I
that
don't know either.
I really, really hope, because yeah, I spent a lot of time in the US. Had several important relationship in the US, so like, I used to go there a lot, and I haven't in 4 5 years, 4 years actually, yeah. And I really hope that after November I can start thinking of coming back, because I miss a lot of my friends, and there's this thing with Tyler, and Greg and Dana. Hey, let's do Hellier 3, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I like the joke that's happening that we're all in Hellier 3 because people keep asking them when it's coming out, and they're like, "You're in it right now. This is it. This is Hellier 3."
I definitely agree with that. I mean, this is what I meant, the concept of this worldwide initiation being broadcasted, being televised, which it is the nature of Thelema. Thelema wants, like, the concept of Thelema, like the philosophy of Thelema, is that every man and every woman is a star. Each one of us has the potential to reach initiation, to reach enlightenment, to unlock that divine spark in each of us. And I mean, we have now the technology to reach everyone, really, through the internet, through the fact that
Mhm.
a show like Hellier, that would have never been taken by any network, they were able to do it professionally. Which, by the way, it's like the photography of Hellier is something beyond. I mean, it
Oh,
looks,
it's
it
so
looks, it
beautiful.
looks so good, right?
And the
And
music.
it looks amazing. And if they were able to pitch it to YouTube and then Amazon Prime and reach a worldwide audience, I mean, that's magic again. I mean, that's proper magic.
Totally.
So in the Phenomenon interview, right, I say that in Hellier they received this message, which is use the numbers.
Mhm.
And they go what have always fascinated to me that then when I spoke with Greg at length, like he told me like they had no background in magic or traditional magic, ceremonial magic, Thelema. So they were actually investigating with very with how you would do, like, so use the numbers, try to fit the cipher, try to fit to the code, whatever these numbers are. But as I was saying at Phenomenon, like when I saw that, because for people that are listening in Hellier, it's use the number and then there's a space and then S.
Yeah.
For me, it was immediately clear because again, I spent 25 years doing this. Like, oh, it's use the number S because S, it's a specific letter that amount to many different things that unlock everything that then brings to the stars of fire. But even more so because the letter S in Hebrew, it's samek. Samek means a prop, like a balloon is a prop, and its color, it's blue. So you know what? When you see these things happening, it's like, okay, wait a second, this is really happening, right?
Yeah.
So if you see a blue balloon, you are into Hellier. You've been initiated. That's the reality of that.
That's definitely what it feels like. My whole life has honestly changed. And that sounds so cheesy, but that's like what I felt after I watched the first season. I was like, wow,
Hmm.
I just got put through something. And then after the second season, even more, it was like, yeah, like this is, I was definitely open to these ideas before, but now it's just been planted in my brain.
And if you look online, I mean, how many people decided to take up magic, or at least accept the possibility of magic. I always say that it's important to keep like a skeptical mind. And I say this, as I say, as somebody who's been, I mean, I'm in my 40s now. I've been doing this since I was a teenager, right? So for me, it's like living and breathing it. But I would always say, like, it's good to keep a skeptical mind and always, like, no, not so much doubt yourself, but don't believe yourself too much because you keep a little bit of distance. If not, you end up believing everything, right? Blindly.
Yeah.
But when so many people, like me and you, right, and then so many others, I've been seeing that, and they went down their own rabbit holes, and they're all making their own strides. They're all going in places. That's initiation on a worldwide scale, and I think that's precisely what this world needs right now, because we do need. I feel at least we do need, as a collective, like a bit of a shake up. Like we
Yeah.
we haven't been in a great spot for the last few years, I feel.
Definitely. And that leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is because the way that you talk about Thelema and your experience in a magical order seem to be very different experiences. And
Hmm.
also, you mentioned too, like Crowley being a narcissist. And if you talk to lots of magical practitioners or scholars or whatever, like in this field, they'll have typically a similar perspective on his like actual character as
Hmm.
opposed to his teachings and everything like that. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Of course, of course, of course.
Okay. So your experience with the OTO and all of that. I'm just curious because the way you're describing Thelema is different than seems to be your experience in the specific order.
Absolutely. So let me give you a little bit of background. Like I said, I discovered Crowley by reading a comic book when I was 12 in the summer of 1990. So it's 30 years ago now. And I was fascinated by the character immediately, especially because, again, I was born in Rome. Um, Something that I always say and people laugh. I was, baptized by the Pope in St. Peter's Basilica, so you can imagine what my family is, pretty much. What kind
Wow.
of exactly. And for those of you listening, yeah, you can ask for your son or daughter to be baptized by the Pope, and usually it never happens, but it can happen. You can, and everybody can ask, pretty much. Let's put it like that. So my family was not like heavily Catholic, but it had those kind of connections, and uh, and in Italy, it's imagine, like, growing in Italy in the 80s and the 90s. You really didn't have many more choices. Like, it was just like there was no either you belonged to that mold or you were, an outsider, and I was definitely an outsider. And of course, in my early teens, I find Crowley and I'm like, oh wow, this is the perfect iconoclast, this polymath that goes against the grain and even creates his own religion. That's amazing, that's fantastic. I ended up, that was like 5 years later. I turned 18 and I become initiated into not the OTO, in the AA, which is the Argentum Astrum, or that's one of the name of it. And it's basically, let's say, the more magically oriented order that Crowley founded, whereby the OTO is the more Masonic oriented. These two terms are different. If there's a flavor to it, let's put it like that.
Okay.
Uh, and also I tried to join the OTO as well, because I was like, those are the two organizations that Crowley left behind. I want to belong to both of them. And my first connections with the OTO in Italy is terrible. It turned out that the people that were running it were a bunch of heroin addicts that with fascist connections, and I was like, I don't want to have anything like that. I mean, like.
Yeah.
Uh, like I've always been very, very clear in my politics. I don't know if I am a leftist, but I'm definitely not a fascist. Let's put it like that. And I'm actually severely like militantly anti-fascist. Always been all my life, and I will always be like this. So like I lived that experience behind. I think the audio is not going to be for me. I'm fine. I'm going to do the other thing, and I did the other thing for many, many years, till in the early 2010s. Due after my mother died out of sudden, and after basically I had to park my music career to stay at home with my father that was very ill as well. Then thankfully he recovered. I was in a bit of a shitty period of my life, as you can imagine. Like I'm in my early 30s. I've been on tour for 10 years. I don't know anything else, and out of sudden I have to pretty much face reality. When things happens, like when you have this big death in your family, you have to stop and reconsider.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where some friends of mine, that at the time I consider very close friends, they were members of the OTO, and they came to me and say, Marco, I mean, you've been a Telemite for already, like, 15 years at this point, even more, and just give the OTO another chance. Like, the people have changed, it's better now. And I do, and it's true. I mean, at least at first, I think that it really feels like, there were new people, let's say a new generation, and everything felt better. And I really needed a family at that point. I Some people have read the articles that I put up, that I am actually putting. Those are going to be the backbone of the book that I'm writing. Some people wrote those articles like, oh, Joko knew you basically got fucked by, you knew that it was going to be bad, right? Why did you go it? You're an idiot. And it's like, okay, maybe it's true, but I was in a very vulnerable place at the time, and I was like, what? Maybe I do need a family. Let's try. And as I always do, I throw myself into it, and
I can relate.
like I go into it full blazing, blazing guns. And of course, I'm not like a newbie. I have already like a long understanding of the current of how what Thelema is. So I pretty much also rise to the grades, because these magical orders are hierarchical, and they are, the instruction is divided into various grades that you take. It's pretty much like going to school, if you want, or to the university. I don't know, whatever analogy works best. But like I go into it and I raise to the grades, and then I move to London, where I become treasurer of the lodge here in London. Ameth Lodge is one of the biggest lodge in the world. We had shy of like 100 people in, and I was the one managing the money, which we're not, I mean, we're not talking about, the hundreds of thousands that people think these groups command, but it was healthy. Let's put it like that. Um, and for good 6 years, 7 years, I am pretty much the poster boy. Like I am recruiting people into the order. I am, officiating the rites every month, or every 2 weeks in case of rites of initiation, and I'm living it pretty much. That does become my second family. And then things come crashing down when pretty much I realized that there's a let's say, huge culture of silencing of sexual abuse. And I know this because, like, one of my sisters in the order came to me and tells me straight away that on the eve of her first degree initiation, she was raped by the initiator. And of course, the situation is very complicated because the guy is in a relationship with two sons, with yeah, the two sons, and he and the victim were having an extraconjugal relationship. So it was very like this gray area, but the rape is rape. There's no gray area in that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I do, since like I said, I was the poster boy and I was believing in my new family, I know that there's a series of steps you can take in order to basically put somebody that for severe misconduct and expel him. And I start that procedure, and that procedure goes nowhere. And eventually, it turns out that that procedure goes nowhere because these things happen all the time. The victim that I can name because she wrote extensively about it, Georgia. She was not the only one. She was one of three, at least that we know. But apart from that, this the perpetrator was not the only one. This thing happened again and again and again. And the problem was always that the people at the top, they simply don't care. They didn't care. They just want things to be hush down so that they could continue doing nothing really, because as the illusion shatters and I am faced with the terrible and horrible reality of what the fuck, who did I spend the last 7 years of my life with, then the light starts shining with all the other shortcomings that this group was
Mhm.
perpetrating. And to cut a long story short, I this is the summer of 2008, so 2 years ago, and I start writing about it. And the wasteland is one piece, and I write that piece after resigning, and all my brothers and sisters turn to me like I was, I don't know, Hitler himself. And
Wow.
that's when I and that yeah, exactly. And that's when I realized that there were also connections with the alt-right, people in the United States, like this guy called Augustus Sol Invictus, which was one of the organizers of the Unite the Rally in Charlottesville in 2017. He was an ex-member of OTO, an ex-member that was at first really, really almost hailed as the new, I don't know, the new thinker of the group, and then it was eventually cast out because the guy was absolutely mental. I mean, uh, just Google who Augustus Sol Invictus is. He was in jail up until a month ago. Now he's out of bond. The guy is dangerous, like proper dangerous, like neo-Nazi, sexual abuser, violent fuck. So just
Wow.
to and the thing is, nobody cares. Nobody gave a flying fuck about it at all. And I was like, no, this is not me. And I did have at the time already a little bit of, let's say I have people listen to what I say because I've been into this for so long, and I've been promulgating these concepts for a while. I never wrote a book yet. I'm writing the book because it's almost like you have to write a book to gain even more credibility, pretty much. I hate writing, but I have to do it because apparently, in order to gain even more credibility, you have to be a published author, and I already have people that want to publish it. So it's
That's
like,
great.
yeah, it is good. I'm very lucky about that. But yeah, I mean, like I start writing it, and then another year passes, and in 2019, I wrote more about whatever happened in the intervening year, especially in the fact that people in the OTO tried basically to I say, like, almost like dox me. I guess that's the term, right?
Yeah.
uh, Dox me into the 8chan, Pizzagate canon groups, in order to basically have these people do something serious against me and against Treadwell's books in London, where at the time I was the manager of. And that's where I realized, no, I mean, this is a cult. This is straight up like it's the a textbook out of, I don't know, Scientology, but without the money of Scientology. And maybe I'm lucky, because if these people had the money of Scientology, had the resources of Scientology, I would be, I would be in actual serious danger. Like, this is just, people um, basically writing and death threats, which is bad enough.
Mhm.
And so I had to go to the police, and then that was escalated to the Interpol. I realized, I mean, let's say I saw a side of life that I never thought I would see, but it was interesting to experience it. And that was like, that's when I drew the line. I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna make my pretty much my job, my call, to make clear that Thelema is nothing of this. Unfortunately, this behavior and everything related to that stems from people not really understanding or caring about Thelema, but caring about emulating Crowley. These are people like, the cult of Crowley. So taking everything that was terrible about Crowley the man, because I will never stop saying, if Crowley was still alive, I would not be his friend. Let's put it like that. Because the guy was a toxic narcissist, and a genius by all means, a polymath by all means, somebody who was able to channel the divine by all means, but also somebody who real legacy is around, I don't know, maybe 2,000 people worldwide, of which, the people at the top are basically the worst character, all the worst uh, character flows of Crowley are being replicated to the nth level. So no, I mean, that's in a nutshell the sad story, and why. I'm still absolutely convinced that Telema has a lot to give to people, and Hellier is an experience is the best example, because whatever is happening in Hellier, the kind of phenomena that they're encountering, and all of us are encountering, are the kind of Telema that brings the magic and the wonder back into the world. But there's no Crowley in Hellier, because you don't need it. You don't need him. So that's I've been rambling a little bit. Sorry.
No, that was fascinating. Like, I am so glad that I was able to talk to you about this. I think it's just really great to have someone on, and able to talk about their experience and acknowledge that they got involved in something more of that type of group, but then still be like, no, but like the reason why I was there, what I was so interested in, Thelema, all of this is not that. Let's not conflate it. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater type of thing.
No, you know what? Also, is that I mean, we go back in time to, like, even 50 years ago. You had to join a group, you had to join an order, you had to join a coven in order to get this kind of information, this kind
Mhm.
of initiation. Now you don't. The age of information, Google. With Google, you can get all the secrets of the orders, right? All the instructions, all the the magical information that was once actually kept secret, because it was difficult to reach it, right? You could not reach it. I would say that there's still a lot of value into not just reading this information, but practicing it, and maybe find somebody that you can trust that has gone through the same experiences before, that can guide you and say, this is, yeah, you're doing it good here. No, that is wrong, right? There's definitely a value in that, but unfortunately, my experience in definitely tells me that every order, every group, every coven tends to become toxic at some point. Like, whenever you have hierarchy, and whenever you have hierarchy tied not so much to meritocracy, like, you get something and you get to the final degree, like you understand something, and then you unlock by yourself the secrets of the final degree. But whenever that process is tied to uh, basically nepotism, being able to toe the party line, and look the other way when things bad happen, then you will always have this problem. Like it's bound to happen again and again. I have lots of friends that are Wiccans, like British traditional Wiccans, and they tell me that often, like the smaller the coven, the less the problems they have. The bigger the coven, the problems happen, right? Um, so yeah, it's difficult for me because having gone through pretty much all the degrees initiation rituals, I know they're beautiful. I know that sadly a lot of people that are solitary practitioners, you miss something whenever you don't have that experience. But that experience, but it's more an aesthetic pleasure, right? It's not something that is needed for actual initiation, because actual initiation it's happens in yourself. It's pretty much like you initiate yourself. And by you, I mean, what the concept of the holy guardian angel, that is like this your divine self, that at some point you manifest a union with it, and you start listening to what they have to say. And often they have to say a lot of interesting things, and that's initiation.
When you left the order, and I know you
Mhm.
talked a lot about people having resistance to you speaking out about everything, but the actual process of leaving, what was that like?
It was very painful. It was very painful because, I mean, what I want to, well, let's see if I can try to convey it, is that for almost a decade of my life, not so much, let's say 7 to 8 years, that was my lived experience, right? I would, especially because I was somebody so involved, and somebody involved also in the organization and running of the lodge itself. um, my weekends were always busy with OTO events, either in London or across the world or across the country. I had to basically book my weekends off the OTO events because I was living and breathing that. And I was doing it because I loved it. It was fulfilling. In time I came to realize that it was fulfilling because pretty much buying into the cult mentality myself. I was looking the other way and not realizing that a lot of things were not done properly, and a lot of people were not treated correctly. But personally, up until that point, I never witnessed something that for me was morally and ethical reprehensible, like rape, obviously. So I was part of that mentality. And when I step out of it, I had to face the fact that I was a part of a cult, and I was being brainwashed by a cult. I mean, this was coming up. This realization came. I mean, I left the order on my 40th birthday. I'm not a child, so and I
Mhm.
like to believe that I'm not stupid, but in fact, I had to also face the reality that, due to many reasons, like I said, it started with me having to fill a void, the loss of my family, pretty much, and finding another. And then realizing that it was convenient. It was something that I always do. And then there was like some bonds, of course, strong bonds that were formed with some of the members that became some of my best friends. All those people are gone now. And I was like, the moment first of all, it took me a good 6 months to actually say, from discovering the rape situation and then uncovering all the rest, including, the fascists and the Nazis and the connections with, very unsavory characters, to just say, no, this is it, I'm out. 6 months is a long time. And that kind of gives you the idea of the stranglehold the cult mentality has on you. Even if you consider yourself a smart person, and even if you're not a child, pretty much. But when I left, it was desolate because you spend people all the time with other people that you consider your family, and you especially because um, when you share initiation rituals, and you see people at a very vulnerable state, and they see you at a very vulnerable state. There's a lot of energy
Mhm.
being exchanged, uh, and then you realize, so all of that was for nothing, because They were not there for me as I was there for them, which is, the idea of the universal brotherhood that all these cults and all these hoarders, uh, portray as a banner. But in fact, everybody was there to pretty much feed this vampiric egregore, this vampiric, thought form that is the cult. And it took me, like, after that, it took me a good year. Yeah, because it's like, yeah, a good year to just being able to detach and realize that, at first, I would say, like, I'm realizing right now that when I think about it, there were moments when I was still thinking, I don't know, maybe in 3 months time, um, these people came to their senses, and I can come back and everything's going to be good again. And then, you realize, no, nothing is changing, because those are not good people. None of them are I'm not saying that everybody is like a rapist or a Nazi. Some are, and are still inside it, but most of them are actually, they're very, like, they're dead inside in many way, right? They prefer looking the other way than doing the right thing, because they don't have any spark in them anymore. And I was one of them. So, like, this was the shattering realization that I had to cope with, and I had to, integrate at some point. And I would say at the same time that magic does give you all the tools to do this. Magic works not so much because you can contact terrorists or the extraterrestrials, or see goblins in a cave, which is fun. That's the fun part of magic. Invoking angels and demons. That's the fun part. But the real transformative experience of magic is that it teaches you how to heal yourself, heal your traumas, by virtue of alchemical transmutation. Now, a full disclaimer right here: I was able to do it also with the help of, like, professionals. Let's put it like that. That is, like,
Mhm.
psychiatrists, psychologists. Something I want to say: magic, as I say, magic will give you a gateway to healing, but always, always, always use also, approved medicine techniques. Because I also seen a lot of, like, approach whereby, oh no, you just need magic to heal. No, that's not that. I was able to find a very supportive partner, and I was able to find help. I was able, it was pretty much, dealing with grief, like, dealing with the death of a parent again, pretty much.
Mhm.
But also, I was lucky that I had, and I have, a series of tools that are magical tools that do facilitate healing. Without them, and I've seen, let's say, less experienced magicians or members of various orders, going through the same ordeals and leaving, and taking much longer to recover, because maybe they didn't master this or that technique yet. But at the same time, magic, it can help you, but it's always important to also realize that from time to time you need external help. You need other people in your life that can support you and then can love you, pretty much. Or you can pay them and they can analyze you, because that's also useful, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was really fortunate enough to have gone to a therapist when I was in high school, when I was a lot younger, and I remember that was actually, interestingly, my first experience with tarot. Was my therapist had mentioned that that's something that she uses. She wasn't telling me to do it because they can't really do that, but that was how I ended up down this path with tarot now too, was actually through getting professional help from a lot of family issues that were happening. And I think a lot of times you see people who try to separate, even with what you're talking about too, with realizing there was like a lot of fascism and neo-Nazis and other problems happening within the order. It's like you can't exactly separate what is going on in the world and spirituality and magic. You see that a lot, that people try to put some type of divider between the two, but that doesn't even logically make sense.
I mean, I'm with you. I see a lot of even respected, authors. I kind of know everybody in the circle because I mean I guess it comes with the age. But I see a lot of like respected authors right now, especially in the United States, saying, "Well, let's not talk about what happens. Let's just concentrate on magic." I'm thinking, what are you saying? Magic is political. Magic is social. Like you cannot separate the two. You cannot. It's just that those two things are intrinsically united to me,
Yeah.
and it's important to realize that. I mean, I think that there are people, like there are people that are right and there are people that are wrong. If your spirituality is about, conquering and the weak and just destroying the infidels and things like that. I mean, that's not good. That's not right. Which I get a lot of flack for saying this because in the Book of the Law in Liber Alve Legis, which is again the central book of Thelema, it is divided in three chapters, and each chapter is a different voice speaking. The first chapter is the goddess Nuit, the second chapter is the god Hadith, and the third chapter is Horus. And Horus is a god of war. And the third chapter is very, very militaristic, and it does speak about stamping the wretched and the weak. But the problem is that, as with every received text, as with every tantra, you cannot you if you think that you just read it and you understand it as it is, you're completely misguided. In many ways that is the double blind, right?
Hmm.
A way whereby you put like a magical concept, and then if people stop themselves at the face value, you can understand that they didn't get it, pretty much. Because whenever you go deeper in the study of Thelema and you hear the voice of Horus again in Liber Tzadi, for instance, you see that he speaks of very different kind of weakness or wretchedness, and it's not about if you are disabled you should die, which is something that I've heard from Thelemites, and my answer was always "fuck you." Because the reality is that there is so much more, and if you stop at the face value you just miss the point.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, like I do believe that magic is intrinsically political, and I do believe that magic is intrinsically social because it is a key to become better, and we become better when we find our harmony with the rest of the world. Sadly, with some people you cannot find harmony, and then maybe something else must be done. I'm also one of those witches that I mean, hexes exist for a reason. That's what
Uh-huh.
you know what
I agree with you.
it's um I feel it's also a bit of a spiritual bypassing whenever you say like, oh no, like everything is gonna sort it out, like we were saying before, right? No, like just do the work, just do your meditation, just do your devotions to your god or goddess or whatever you believe in. Everything's gonna be fine. I think that witches, magicians have, by virtue of being who they are, we have almost like a call, and the goal is to rectify what's wrong. And I'm rambling again. Sorry about that.
No, this is amazing. This is exactly what I think, and it's really nice to hear someone who can articulate it in a way that is much more like every time I try to explain this to someone, it comes out not as I guess like well formed as I hear it in my head. And so hearing you say it on here, it's like, yes, this is what I've been trying to say for people for a while whenever they ask about hexes or curses and even just like how magic is political. Like you see a lot of stuff here. I live on the west coast of America and there's a lot of protests and things happening and people are always like shocked sometimes to hear that there's people asking about invisibility magic before they go to protests or there's a group of witches at the protests who are helping and it's like it's all part of it. It's all part of what we're going through like as always in history too. Like a lot of traditions were born out of oppression.
Absolutely. I mean, think of voodoo. I mean, voodoo is at the very center of the Haitian Revolution. I mean, think of witchcraft itself. Witchcraft was. always like a way for the dispossessed to regain some sort of agency over their life.
Hmm.
Um, Freemasonry, I mean, I'm a Freemason as well. Freemasonry used to be, I mean, not anymore. Now it's a glorified dinner club, but in very beautiful halls, which, as I said, I am a sucker for aesthetics, unfortunately. But the point is that Freemasonry, I mean, Freemasonry, or rather, a type of Freemasonry called Carboneria, uh, they started the Italian Revolution, which got Italy together. You know, like they made the Italian state. So it's always been political. For people to say that it's not political, it's because we've been lucky to live in relatively easy times, especially, I guess, especially you guys in the States, having been, the hegemonic culture for those since World War II, and being so, so distant from the rest of the world. There's never been so many clashes, cultural clashes, social clashes, economical clashes. um, so it's easy to forget that it's not just about lighting a candle or honoring the ancestor, which is part of the praxis. It has to be done. But
Hmm.
it's also about using those tools that the spirits tell us and teach us in order to make the change in the world and stemming the tide of injustice. That's magic. And to me, that's the lemma. um, of course, lots. I'm saying this, and I also, as I said before, a lot of problems is, starts with Thelema right now. So I'm trying to change that, that connection, and we'll see if I'll be successful in a few years after the book, because the book is the most important thing. You gotta write a book.
I remember years ago I was on a cruise ship with my family and there was like a schedule of events and there was like a Freemason meeting and I didn't even know really what it was at that point and I was like I'm going to go try to go to this.
What
And so
happened
I,
there?
so I showed up. It was in this, you mentioned the aesthetics. It was in this old bar on the cruise ship that had like the leather upholstered chairs. And I walk in, and the whole room had been cleared for this like Freemason meeting, and there was just no one in there. So I just remember that because then I left and then like looked it up, and I was like, oh, this is a magical order. I was like, I don't know. I was just
You know what? It's easy to laugh as we are right now, and rightfully so, about Freemasonry, because since I mean, I would say like the last 50 years, really, Freemasonry became a glorified dinner club that does charity. Right now, here in
Mhm.
the UK, Freemasonry is very big still, and when it comes to charitable work, Freemasons are the second biggest charity in the country. So I mean, there's a lot of good money raised for good causes, but there's very, very little magic left. At the same
Yeah.
time, if you're interested in the Western Hermetic tradition, the blueprint of what you do in ceremonial magic comes from Freemasonry. What you do in a traditional Wiccan rite comes from Freemasonry. What you do in a traditional Thelemic rite comes from Freemasonry. Golden Dawn comes from Freemasonry. So for me, as a lifelong seeker of this weird stuff, for me was a no-brainer. Once I moved to London, I was like, okay, I'm in the city that started Freemasonry, or at least organized Freemasonry, and I have the chance to be initiated and go to lodge in the most beautiful temple in the world. I'm gonna do it. And 7 years later, now I'm the master of the lodge, of my lodge, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I've done my experience, and then maybe now I can move on, because in the end, is that oftentimes it's just going, go to the lodge, open and close, and then go to dinner, which I mean, it's not what I'm there for.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a little bit too throughout this. You mentioned angels a couple of times, but that was another thing that we had like an interesting synchronicity about, is because I think I mentioned a couple of times in the podcast, like Archangel Azrael as
Hmm.
kind of being more of my interest, and then also my very um, confusing for a lot of people thoughts about the hierarchy of angels in general,
Hmm.
and basically, I would love to hear your perception on angels. From what I've read, that's an important part of Thelema.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and also, like, you mentioned that you just had a lot of significant experiences with Archangel Azrael over, like, a long, like, period of your life, and I'm just so curious about that.
All right, this is gonna be a good one. So, and whenever I remember, we discussed it briefly over email, and I was like, okay, that is a synchromystical moment, really. Like, I think that a lot of people completely misunderstand what angels are. And you
Yes.
mentioned it on one of the previous episodes of the podcast. Angel, the term angel, I mean, the name itself comes from Greek angelos. It means a messenger, right? And in many ways, angels are not these, beautiful, nice, sweet creatures, etheric creature that look over you and wants your good. They are messengers. By that, the way I teach, to my students what angels are, they're mathematical construct in many ways. They transmit information from the God source to the rest of the universe. And the hierarchy itself is explained in the way that you can think like I don't know, an operating system has different programs, and some are more important, and some are kernel programs, some are browsers. So there are like some more important and less important in order for the operating system to operate, and that's what angels are. Okay, that's precisely the nature of angels. Now some of them, because of actually, before moving that, Damien Eccles, which is a fantastic author, you all should read him, and he just wrote a book on angels called Angels and Archangels, and he is a fantastic magician. um, he speaks about the fact that everything around us is made of angels. And I go a little bit further, and I think of the Matrix, the movie, right? Whenever
Mhm.
they see through the Matrix and they see at some point, all everything is like source of code, those are angels. All of that, we're surrounded by the source of code that create reality as we perceive it. All of it is angels. So for a magician, in order learning how to invoke, evoke, and command or enter in relationship with this implies becoming a master over reality itself. Because if you can enter in a relationship with the angel, I don't know, let's say the angel of Jupiter, you can call prosperity into your life. You can call stability into your life, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to go into specifics because it can be tedious. Now, when it comes to certain angels, the so-called archangels, some of them have become over the years, by virtue of accretion, people calling the same angel again and again and again, because maybe they're good at what they do. It's almost like an analogy is that you might have many apps on your phone, but you always use Facebook, or you always use Twitter, or you always use WhatsApp. You always use few apps on your phone. Those, if they were angels, they would eventually they developed a human-like consciousness. So when it comes to the archangels, the traditional four and the seven planetary ones, and then there's some more, you can start having a relationship with them which is similar. It's more like human like, you call them and they answer, like with voice, and
Yeah.
they could it's not just like transactional, even if with these creatures is always transactional because that's what they are. But you can have a more human like relationship, as I said. Now, in the case of in Thelema, angels have, or rather, the concept of the Holy Guardian Angel (HGA). It's very important because the Holy Guardian Angel is the realization of, or rather, it's the consciousness that at some point the magician that has balanced the elements and has raised through those early stages of magical evolution, if you want. At some point, the magician approaches what is called the solar consciousness, and by doing that, the magician comes to know the holy guardian angel, that is, his own or her own, their own divine selves. Um, the best way I can try and explain this, even if this concept usually are almost impossible um, to convey through language because language is limited, is, let's say, like the best version of yourself, almost like your superhero self. And if anybody's listening who's an actual magician, don't cringe too much. I'm trying. I'm trying. I'm trying to keep it simple. But imagine that. Imagine that concept, right? Now, each one of us will find their own holy guardian angel. Okay, that it's a very unique and personal experience in Thelema, and I would say in a lot of like more advanced magical systems. There's also a not so much veiled allegory to a sexual union with the angel, or rather that that union is sexual in nature or sensual in nature, because it's really like the kind of feeling, the kind of rapture you feel when you unite yourself sexually with your loved one. And by loved one I mean capital L, loved one. And it's a very ecstatic experience. It's something that it has been described much better than I can by poets all over the course of history. Um, the Sufi poet Rumi has some beautiful bits on this one, and I really suggest everybody to read Rumi at some point because like his poetry is sublime. And pretty much every time he speaks of the lover, that is the rapturous love of the union with the Holy Guardian Angel. Now, the thing that the synchromystical event between me and you is when you were telling me that you had experience with the archangel Azrael, because the archangel Azrael, which is the angel of death, is one that came to me when I was very very young, like in my early teens, to the point that if I started to pursue magic more, it's because as a young goth in the '90s, I was like, the first thing I do, I'm gonna call the angel of death, and he came, and he's been with me ever since. To the point that at first, like if you look for me and you I don't know you go into the web archive or whatnot, these things to let's see Marco Visconti in 2001. Like I was always named Azrael. Like my DJ name when I was a quite well-known DJ in the industrial scene, it was DJ Azrael. I was like all my email accounts or is always Azrael 2393. So that consciousness has been with me for a long long time. I thought at first, when I was, before having the knowledge and conversation with with my holy guardian angel, at first I thought, okay, that's my holy guardian angel. Then, I mean, that's not the case because Azrael is a consciousness that appears to different people,
Uh-huh.
whereby the HGA is always personal, is always unique to yourself. And again, magicians who listen to this and they understand a little bit more what I'm talking about, yes, I'm simplifying things. So, because we have limited time. But for me, whenever you spoke of Azrael, and Azrael is not someone that someone see I speak of him or them as a friend because he is a friend, and for me, I see him as a male figure. I know that it appears to different people in different gender because angels are genderless. Gender doesn't exist in the
Mhm.
angel world, right? But to me, it doesn't. It definitely appears, and I always appeared as a male. So, whenever you told me that you had those experiences, I was like, okay, this is interesting because this is one of those moments where, whenever this kind of synchronicity happens, like my radar was like, okay, I'm listening, because Azrael is not very popular anymore. Like in the '90s, it was very very popular. Like there's this book by Leila Weddell, which, a New Orleans author. She passed away recently, I think, actually a couple of years ago, and she wrote this book like Our Name is Melancholy, and basically it's a long long book over um, very interesting like channeling experience with Azrael. And I was like, and that for me was like when this, I think the book came out in 96 or 97. And I remember reading that after having had at least 3 or 4 years of experience with Azrael already myself. And I was like, this is very interesting to me because she speaks of things that I don't see, but she also speaks of a lot of things that I've seen. So for me, it was like, okay, this is a this is basically a consciousness that exists almost like objectively, right? It's not just like my subjective perception of it. I'm not just making it up because there was
Mhm.
in the book there's ways where she describes Azrael that were like dead on to things that I was experiencing myself. And then over the years I met other people and we shared experiences, and I realized, yeah, I mean that's the case. It kind of, I think Azrael kind of retreated from the limelight in the last few years. um and maybe it's for the worse, because everybody is so, like, we live in a society so afraid of death,
Yeah.
whereby death is, I mean, death is why we live. We live to die, because that's the only thing that we, all of us, are is certain of. Like, we are not certain if we will be happy or sad in our lives, if we'll be rich or poor, if we'll be successful or not successful. The only thing each of us humans are sure of, that we will die. So you know it would be good for Azrael to come back more, not as in, like, people dying left and right, but for us as a species, to become once again more close to the concept of death, because it's inevitable, and it's important to be aware of what it is. In Thelema, we don't even think that death is the end. In many ways, one of the most beautiful things I think of Thelema is that there's a rite where you celebrate the greater feast of somebody, which is when somebody dies. You don't mourn them, you rejoice them because they went on to bigger and more incredible adventure.
Wow.
So yeah.
That is so interesting. And whenever I think of angels in general, I had such an aversion to them, especially a couple months ago. I just not intrinsically, but like I intuitively knew there was something strange about the way that they were being presented to me in terms
Mhm.
of pop culture and any like more new age style book that I would read. It did not make sense because I just don't like my own perceptions of what I've experienced in my life just didn't line up with there just being this completely like glowing, again, for lack of a better term, quote unquote angelic beings.
Yeah.
That's an adjective that people use with a specific connotation.
Oh, but they're absolutely not that.
Yeah, they're not that, and angels aren't angels.
I don't know if you watched a movie that came out in 2016 called A Dark Song.
No,
If you haven't, do,
I'll write it
because
down.
it's on Amazon Prime right now. I mean, it's you can find it easily, and it's basically a very, very. It's not a perfect movie, but it's a movie about some two people trying to do the Abramelin operation. And the Abramelin operation is one of the, I don't know, the MVPs of magic, right? Everybody speaks about the Abramelin operation, which is this thing whereby you conjure your holy guardian angel, you conjure the angelic power. And both in the book, which comes from the Middle Ages, and in popular culture, the angel that you conjure is this being of pure light, and it's you have to be pure to receive them, etc., etc. So lots of people thought, oh, that's light magic. That's the highest level of theurgy, which is divine magic. Now, what's good about the movie? Like I said, it's not a perfect movie, but it's worth watching it. It's that, without giving too much spoiler, they call the angel and the angel arrive, and it's absolutely terrifying. Not because it's a monster, but because it's absolute power. The kind of power that could just like you could move badly and be completely obliterated out of existence. It's nuclear power in many ways. That is what angels are. It's another thing, whenever this you read the Bible and you say that the Ophanim, which are like the thrones, appear, which in theory are like some of the highest level of the hierarchy of angels. They appear to people, and the first thing they say is that be not afraid, because in fact, people are like shitting themselves, right? It's like, oh my god, what is this? And that's what angels are, you know. I, in my magical career, for the lack of better term, I worked a lot with angels and I worked a lot with demons. Angels are scarier, like by far, because if angels are like in this pure, almost like, cold, cold sheer power, demons are more passionate. It's more passionate creatures, right? Passionate consciousness.
I
But
love this.
you can reason with them because they want to have good time and you want to have good time, and it's fine, right? And yes, some of them are very scary and some of them are very powerful, but I don't know. There's a more earthly quality to demons than angels are. Just no, angels are like, it's they're different beings. Let's put it like that.
I was reading this book. Well, I am in the middle of reading it. It's called The Exorcist Handbook by Josephine McCarthy. And it was really synchronistic when I got this book because the way that Josephine McCarthy describes angels is a lot more like what you're talking about. She
Mhm.
specifically says like angels just are. And there's no like you can't put them on like a moral scale because that doesn't exist for them. And so when they show up for you, you don't know like why. Like you can't just be assumed that it's this again, quote unquote, angelic reason why they always show up. Sure, they can really help you and it's awesome if you develop that type of relationship, but you can there's some people that ritual magicians, which she calls idiots in this book who do this, to try to bind angels and send them after people. And then she
Yeah.
talks about an experience she had where she had one of those sent at her and then she ended up having to eat the bindings that she could see, like, and then she was sick, physically sick for days, and then this angel marked her as a spell eater.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, angelic magic is the real deal. Not to put Goisha on a lower level. Goisha is the demonic magic, one of them. But it's just like, angels are sheer power because, again, they are the infrastructure of reality as we know it. Demons aren't. Demons are the shadow of reality. So, in many ways, demons can do other things than from angels, but they are more passionate. They're more. They have a much more, I mean, to a degree, cheerful character. Angels are no. Angel are really like straight up. They're there to do something, to tell you something, to teach you something. And I mean, in the Bible, it's the angel that destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean,
Yes, yes.
it's I mean, and you read it. It's basically you read the if you read the description, that's basically a nuclear bomb being detonated. So it's like, yeah, do I want to bind these creatures? Do I want to think that this consciousness can do what I want? No. What I usually, I mean, one of the things that I always teach to whoever, students that I have, it's always like, magic is about building your body of light. That is your external. You can call the aura. You can call like your magical circle. There are many terms, but in many ways, like you build this etheric construct around you and different layers of that, so that whenever you're finally ready for the when you get into evocation mode, pretty much, that's you're not blown away by the magnitude of the sheer power of the consciousness that you call. Because if you don't have a body of light, that's where Josephine McCarthy speaks of idiots. Because people that read a book and they do a thing and thing happen, then they're blown away. It's like, yeah, yeah, why would you, why would you do that, right? So in many ways, like this is something as well that I was discussing with Greg Newkirk, and it was, I mean, I love the guy and I love how they are so good at what they're doing and they're so respectful of what they realized they chanced upon, that they were like, Hellier 3 will come out maybe whenever will, because we are trying to understand and we need to approach this with caution. And I was like, yes, you do. You really do. Because because there's magic is beautiful. Like as I said before, magic can and will heal you, and magic can and will show you beautiful vistas that you didn't think possible. Magic can also destroy you. And most of the times, especially in this day and age of, witches of Instagram and witch talk, which by all means I'm not dissing. We all started somewhere, that's fine. But at the same time, it's also in a way dangerous because there's so many more people listening and watching this thing. Like the reach is so massive right now
Yeah.
that there's a lot of people that could, get burned. And my grandma used to say, you grow up by the scars you accrue. I was like, maybe that's it. That's humanity, as to build up some more scars. But Jesus, less scars, please. We've been doing a lot of this.
So this is my angel scar from the time I tried to bind so and so, and this is my
Yeah,
demon scar from the time that I thought that I could send this after someone and have no repercussions myself. I'm
exactly.
kidding. I haven't tried to do those things, but
Oh, I have. Oh, trust me, I have. I was a kid as well. I was. I mean, trust me. If you were to look at my magical diary of the last 30 years, the first 15 to 20, you're like, the fuck you're doing? Stop. Like, please stop. It's like, but I mean, I'm still alive, so there's something there, right?
I guess I've always been really wary of stuff like that from my own life because I've had so many things come to me without me asking that the prospect of seeking it out scares the shit out of me sometimes because like what is it going to be like if I already have this connection? Because there's been times when I have worked with Azriel just casually. Like I've never done like an intentional ritual to like have them show up because he's just for me has been around for a
Hmm.
while. And like I see him because I paint spirit portraits. So when I close my eyes and I look at people, I can sense and like see energies that I can't really verbalize. And so I end up drawing them out. But for me, there was always this like really weird mass over my left shoulder that I couldn't figure out what it was for a long time. And then I started to realize, oh, I think that's a what some people might call a glowing ball of eyes. But for me, it's just like this energy thing. And one of my housemates ended up talking to what they believed to be Azriel to someone else who was living in the house for a while. And then afterwards, they had such a huge headache. And they're like, how do you do this all of the time? And then I started to wonder, it's like, have I just desensitized myself for that type of contact from this specific consciousness? I'm wondering if that's something you've experienced or.
I don't think it's desensitization. I know that there are people that are more they're more prone to being spiritually aware, if you want, right? Medium or channelers, whatever you want to call it, right? Seers, that's what they used to be called in the past. um, it's just like, if I were to make a diagnosis like this, is that what it's likely is that you, or people that tend to have these experiences, tend to have a already developed body of light, like an ability to withstand those frequencies and those consciousness better than the average Joe, but all of also that can be improved upon. You can I don't know, like if you were to start doing like start to doing a magical practice, like a ceremonial magical practice, like start working on your presence, then start working on the classic pentagram rituals and whatnot. And that would definitely strengthen it even better, to the point that maybe I don't know, could start seeing them with your eyes and start hearing them with your ears, which can be a bit jarring at time because you go around and say, oh, who's that? Ah, okay, that's you. uh, which is like in this house happens a couple of times. And me and my partner's like, yeah, yeah, and that's yeah. Tonight we have presences. That's fine. It's okay, pretty much. But I mean, at the same time, I feel like this is what magic is supposed to be. It is supposed to be a bit over the top, right? Because
Yeah.
if not, what is just if not, it's just like all in our head. Um, Something that has been happening, I would say, since the 60s, really. And then with the popularization of chaos magic, like this idea that magic is just another kind of psychology, right? The psychological model of magic. I really don't like it, because I spoke with spirits, and spirits spoke back to me. I felt energies, and I moved energies, and I created energy. It's not just in my mind, right?
Yeah.
It is a model. It is okay to think of spirits, of demons, of angels as your subconscious, your super ego, or whatever, whatever Jungian term you want to slap on it. It's fine, because it's good to have models. You can wrap your mind around models. You can think about it. But the reality is this, and as you know, because I mean, we discussed it a little bit, like these things exist beyond what you think they are.
Yeah.
They're there, as we are here. And I would say, like, when I think of like my practice and the things I teach, it's always like, see the world as a map of reality, right? Like, you can map these experiences as psychological constructs. You can map these experiences as gods and goddesses. You can map these experiences as, I don't know, energies, whatever you want. Do all of that. Like, do a week like a psychological model, do a week like a spirit model, do a week like an energetic model. Just remember, they're just models. They exist beyond whatever little neat box you want to put them in. They exist.
Yeah. That's what I loved about Tenny's lecture at the end of Phenomenicon. He was like, "The second that you tell yourself you believe something fully, then you close yourself off to so many things."
I mean, absolutely. In fact, when I first start talking about, what I think is happening in, the Thelemic theory of Hellier, a lot of, I mean, I was writing this before I start speaking with Greg and Dana, and I was writing on Reddit, and I was writing it, like, this is my theory, right? And I got so much like hate for that, because like, oh no, you're trying to tell us what to think. And I was like, folks, no, I'm just telling you, first of all, that, I mean, if David Christie existed, if Terry Reist existed, they definitely were pushing towards Dilemma. That's Alan Greenfield.
Mhm.
But this is just a model still. Like, in my phenomenon talk, I say that, I've been contacting Terry Reist. Just like the last few days, over my Patreon group, we've been doing like a ritual to keep contacting this entity, and we're having results. It's like doing the Hestes method, but with magic, pretty much. But this is just a model. I'm not saying that I have the answers. I don't think anybody has the answers. That's the phenomena. Like, that is, we're just interfacing with this n-dimensional consciousness, fractalizing itself down to our space-time continuum. And it's bound to look different to me, to you, to Greg and Dana, to Tyler Strand, to people on Reddit. It's because it's so much bigger than all of us. And
Yeah.
it's meant to be complicated. Like, something that I know that, the Hellier crew is struggling with, because their crew, their audience was at the beginning mostly, paranormal enthusiasts, ghost hunter enthusiasts, and everybody wanted the goblins. Where are the goblins? No goblins, no star. And then,
I have that shirt too.
I have that shirt. It's fantastic. And the reality there is that there's goblins everywhere. It's just that maybe they don't look like goblins, but they are, because that's the phenomena. That is the many faces of the great god Pan, and Pan means all. So it's all around us constantly. That's it.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put that. Like, I see everywhere, just everything reminds me of the Green Man. But I remember when I went to Glastonbury and I got to my Airbnb and there's just a green man's face above the door and I was like, "Wow."
I mean, yeah, I mean, he here is Green Man Central,
Oh
obviously.
my gosh. Isn't there a store called the Green Man? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's the lady in the goddess in the Green Man on High Street.
Yeah.
Uh, it's, I mean, it's also, the, the Green Man is, it is Pan, and Pan is so much more than, quote unquote, just a Greek deity. Pan
Mhm.
is all, and it is the entirety of the experience of humanity. it's a big deal, pretty much, and it's all around us, all constantly. How we interface with Pan, it will depend from person to person, and I don't think that the only way is through the stars of fire. What I'm saying is that if you follow the breadcrumbs that they've been following, whoever is David Christie, whoever is Terry Wrist, is pushing them towards the Star Sapphire, which is this very complex sex magica rite that allows you to unlock the Night of Pan, the full consciousness of the divine. So yeah, Elliot 3 will be, I don't know, PG-18, I suppose.
They might have to start an OnlyFans for Patreon or Hellier 3.
It's gonna be Elliot 3 OnlyFans edition. I mean,
Only pans. I think I've seen that meme in the group chat or the group on Facebook.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, me and Tyler have been low key making fun on this thing for a while, actually. Because it's like, how are we gonna do this? How are you guys gonna do this? I mean, honestly, I'm curious because the Star Sapphire is one of the most advanced rituals in Thelema. It's not just sex magic, it's not, and it's not even, as I described at the talk, it's not even like five distinct sex operations with your partner. You and your partner must be very advanced. uh, you must have a full command of breathing techniques, of control of your body, control of the release of your body. It's very long. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, pretty much. But it's also, I mean, like I said, everything makes absolute sense if you read it under a Thelemic lens. I'm not saying that's the only way, because it's not, because the nature of Pan is that there's not just one way to reach it.
Mhm.
But like I said, if you follow all the hints that they found, it points to that. I mean, I guess, like I said, it points to that so beautifully that it's like, I remember like the first email that I sent to Greg. I was like, I don't know if you guys are, if this is scripted. If it's scripted, I love you anyway, because it's fantastic. Like for a connoisseur, like it's really like, oh my god, this is like the Thelemic movie I always wanted and never got, right? And then Greg replied and say, nope, actually this is happening, and I was like, okay, I'm listening. Like, it's interesting. And it's definitely happening, because trust me, like at the end, in like a couple of weeks, the Penny Royal podcast is coming out, and Nathan invited me as the magician expert, if you want. Oh, you guys are in for something in that podcast. Trust me.
I am so excited for it. I have it pre-saved.
You will be blown away by it. It's, first of all, I mean, I cannot stress how lucky I am that I ended up meeting all these amazing people. Like Nathan and Kyle are another like two fantastic like investigators and smart people and very knowledgeable people, and like they went in and they dissected like everything you see in Hellier that happens in Somerset that is hinted at. You will get all the answers. Like you will.
Oh,
It's so good, and and like I said, I cannot say more because it's only 2 weeks away now. Like 3 weeks away, it's coming anyway. It's so good. But this is also why I realized, no, this is not scripted. This goes down. This goes back, decades and decades,
wow.
and it's incredible. There's also something else to say, like that in 2012 everybody said that the world was going to end, like the Aztecs
Yeah.
calendar was coming to an end. The reality there is that what did what that prophecy said, that in 2012 you'd start what's called the 7 years of tribulation, whereby it would be 7 difficult years, whereby at the end of it something would happen, something big would happen, like a consciousness, a changing event would happen. Well, we are at the end of the seventh year right now, and all this Hellier thing has been happening. And another thing that's maybe it's not completely clear for those who don't really, live and breathe Thelema, is that the Night of Pan is connected to the mysteries of Babylon, which is a name that
Hmm.
many have heard. And the mysteries of Babylon are the mysteries of the apocalypse, as in the revelation of the end of days. But not like something, oh my God, the world is over, the aliens come and destroy us. No, it's about the apocalypse, especially from a Thelemic perspective, is the return of the divine feminine, the
Yes.
the destruction of the patriarchy, etc., etc., etc. So
Totally.
we are right on time. It's I don't know. I have a good feeling about this. Of course, comes in a month time if Trump gets reelected. I was like, yeah, I was wrong, but we will see.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. But oh man, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. I learned so much today.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been fantastic, and thank you for this podcast. I mean, honestly, I binged it. I will keep on listening. I subscribe to the Patreon. It's amazing. Thank you.
Well, where can everyone find you and what are you up to on your Patreon? I've heard some good
All
things.
right. So I have a website, marcovisconti.org, where you can find my all my links. And then on patreon.com/marcovisconti, you can basically join an online magical school. That's what we've been doing. I started it like almost 2 years ago now. I was just writing basically a Thelemic blog with some people supporting it, very scattered people. And then, of course, COVID hits, and then I'm at home. At the point I was jobless, so I was like, okay, you know what? Let's try and do something more. And so basically, I started a magical school. Pretty much everything that I always wanted to teach at an OTO lodge, I'm doing it online. Thankfully, we have plenty of opportunities to do it now. Through every week I write like a magical lesson, and then we have a live stream, and then I put the recording of the live stream for those who cannot connect directly, and then we have magical rituals every month. All online. Well, on 2 weeks ago, we actually some of us met here in Glastonbury on top of the Tor, and we did like an invocation there.
Oh,
So
so cool.
it's happening. It's happening. It's fun. Uh, I'm just like 3 people away from reaching the 100 people, 100 patrons milestone, which I never thought I would ever go. Over 20, right? And now I am. I mean, thanks to PhenomenaCon, that was a big boost. But then people keep joining. That's great. It's join it. Join. It's fun. We have fun. We invoke angels and demons. It's fun. Come.
Well, you got me sold. I'm actually gonna hop on there. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days, so.
Yeah, well, it would be good to see you there.
Well, if you would like to find me and you're listening to this, you can find me at mothmana.com. There's a digital gallery of some of my portraits, as well as links to what else I'm up to. I do readings as well. And if you would like to join the hordes and support the podcast in my underworldian city, that'll be patreon.com/mothmana. I have bonus podcast episodes. I do like energy, like various pick a card readings, and a lot of other interesting things on there that I kind of throw up sometimes. It's written kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So if that speaks to you, that's where I'll be. And you can also find me on Instagram at Mothmana Tarot. So thank you again for being here, Marco. And this is the part of the podcast where I hit stop recording, but I keep talking to you.
All right.